Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your friend and brother Robert W. JoJo Hill, the servant, the artist, and the author. Today, I'm just going to do a quick, brief video. I want you guys to start following over to my YouTube channel. I'm going to put a link in the description box below so you can kind of pop over there and check it out. Subscribing to that channel over there for us and just really start to push that thing and build it out. I have neglected it for so long, but I want to begin to do that. But all right, anyway, I want to talk tonight for just a few moments. I've been looking at the marches. I'm seeing a whole bunch of marches and things like that. And again, let me start this off. Let me make this disclaimer right from the gate. I'm not a political person, but I have to just kind of speak to what I see. I'm not trying to be political anything. I just have to speak what I see and kind of give my commentary based upon the things that I kind of watch in our society, in our day, in our time. So with that, I'm not asking that anybody agree with me. I'm not asking that anybody believe anything that I say. I simply say research it out for yourself, check it out, look at it a little more detailed, take your feelings out of it if you can. I know that's going to be very complicated for a lot of people because most people were raised to be more emotional than they have been logical, and they definitely have not been in most cases. This is of course not everybody, but in a lot of cases people have not been geared to think or view things from a spiritual perspective. With that, my a part of my assignment and my overall call is to speak truth to power and to share with the people some things that they may not have looked at, some things that you may not have seen. I heard something that's very powerful, and the example was given of a circle of information that you have, and this is everything that you know or everything that you think that you know. And everything that you believe that you know is all represented by the space that's in this circle. It's very powerful. I thought it was a very, very, very powerful analogy. And everything else outside of that is the things that you do not know. And sometimes what happens is um, we have to look at things and examine things from a different perspective. We have to kind of look at things and say, hey, maybe there's something else. Now, I noticed the marches and things that's going on all over the country. The women have been marching, in which I believe that people can do whatever they want. They have the power to do and choose whatever to do, whatever they decide. And I support the rights to do that. I really do support that. Now, with that, I wanted to just kind of point up a couple pieces that I think may be relevant. We have to keep in mind, folks, that we are under a very interesting time in our pilgrimage on this planet. This is a very interesting period of time. And we have to also keep in mind that there's agendas, there's things that are in play and that are at play. Now, those of us that are aware and that, look at things a little bit closer can notice these things. And what you have to keep in mind that if there is an overall agenda, if there is a plan, if there's something that's been structured out, the wealthy and those that are in seats of substantial power, they don't think in terms of days and weeks. I talked about this last year sometime. The wealthy and those that have power and those that are in the quote unquote controlling positions, they think decades down the line. So where you're thinking that something just popped out and it's just living in a space within the last several months, this is something that's been systematically planned, programmed, and executed for probably 3 or 4 decades of time. Because the wealthy and those people think in terms of decades. They don't think in terms of days and weeks and months. They don't. Decades. So I saw a clip. I remember seeing this clip of Donald Trump probably 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and he was on some talk show and he was talking about if he would become president, blah, 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 blah. He just kind of threw it out there. And they said, oh, are you going to become president? And he said, well, I don't know. We don't know. Time will tell. He said some crap like that. But it was already completely designed that he would ultimately land here strategically after uh, President Barack Obama's time. All these things are completely planned. Now, if you don't believe that, please feel free. You don't have to listen to this. You don't have to pay attention to it. But those that are conscious people, and I'm not talking about the other conscious part. I'm talking about those that are aware, things that people that have their ears to the ground, that are listening and paying very close attention to what's actually happening in our environment, in our society, in our world. We have to look very closely at that. Um, I'm looking at these marches and I'm saying, wow, this is a lot. You know, getting these protests, you got these people setting fires, all these different pieces. Now, several things popped into my mind. The first piece was, uh, who exactly is determining and calling out these quote unquote protests and marches? Is it actually the common person that's actually thinking of this and saying, let's do this? This is my commentary. These are my thoughts. This is how I have to look at things, and I examine things very closely because I understand we're not in a system of random movement. We're not. Everything is specific. So if you have that in mind, if you understand that you're dealing with an adversary that is very, very specific in their movement, if you understand that every move is specifically cut, measured, and weighed for a specific time, you'll start looking at these things a little bit closer. And my submission to you all today is, I want us to just begin to look at it. Just pay it a little bit closer attention, because it's not as random as we think. It's not. It's really, really, really not. Consider there's an agenda that wants to ultimately put something in place, but you can't get it jump started just at the onset of just, let's just do this, and just forcing it down the public's throat. Okay, let's say that that's something that you want to get done, but you know you have to do it in a particular way. So what you do is you take one set of time and you create a narrative. Then you take another set of time and then you build out this quote unquote savior, if you will, that comes in and rescues all of those from these said scenarios that have been created. Then in the meantime, you take the savior character and you push all the agendas through. So you get all these agendas done. In the meantime, you're connecting to those agendas that are being pushed through some pacifiers. You know, you may get this, you may get healthcare, you may get such and such and such for hospitalization and care and all these things, right? Push that through. Now, the idea is never about that. The idea is about pushing this other side of stuff. It's this other agenda that's constantly being pushed. Guys, please don't ever believe that this is not agenda based. It is. All of it is, because it's not based upon a righteous system. And we talked about that before. All right, now here's the other side of it. You have the one that everyone adores. You have Obama. Everybody loves him. Everybody loves him. Oh, he's perfect. Ain't never had no baby's mama drama. Nobody ever never came out and said this mug done did nothing. Nothing. All the way, it's just clean slate all the way through. So everybody's, oh, he's so classy, he's so wonderful, so great. Now, all the agendas are constantly being pushed. Now, they're push, 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 push. Now, once all of the things that will be completely unacceptable to the normal person's or the average person's meter or acceptance gauge, or however they would process this information, right? They say, okay, cool, we got all that stuff done. Now, let's go to this next part. Now, this next part is really to push something else. Now, what all these pieces are, I don't know, man. I'm not a politics guy. But I do know that there's certain things that are characteristic of an agenda-based program. Now let's initialize, or let's bring in this next character that seemingly nobody enjoys, and is constantly being pushed in the media how much everybody doesn't like him. All this stuff, oh, he's horrible, he's this, he's going to do this, he's going to do this. It's all this nag, 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 nag. So you introduce this character that nobody enjoys. You introduce him in television, you introduce him being a jerk, you introduce him in being this shrewd business guy, you introduce him in being all these things that the people are constantly being programmed. The television is doing nothing but programming. The internet's just all programming the people to think in a particular way about a specific person. Now, this person lands in position. Pow! So now what is that going to do? You create the narrative that says, oh man, we can't stand this guy. This guy's horrible. He's horrible. He's this. He's going to tell them all these things, right? So you get this narrative going in the people's mind that this person is an outrage. So then you say, okay, let's start doing these marches. Let's start doing these protests. Now keep in mind, all this is a part of an agenda. This stuff ain't random. This stuff is not random. Listen to me closely, folks. It is not random. If you think this stuff is random, please ask God the Father to show you and give you some spiritual insight to show you, hey man, this stuff it's plain as day to me. I'm looking at this stuff unfolding. I'm going, man, I can't believe people are actually buying into this stuff. But they're buying into it hook, line, and sinker. Going to these marches and these rallies and all these things. Now, it's nothing wrong with your right to do this. Because I know people going to say, well, we can march if we want to. And people, listen, man, you can do whatever the crap you want to. That ain't my freaking problem. The only thing I'm concerned about is noticing the pattern It has to be something else. Now, could it be that perhaps the idea behind putting this person in place is to incite a thinking of rebellion? Perhaps. Perhaps the person that's put in position is put there because they know that the people have been conditioned to think like this. It's programming. You have no idea how many folks are just walking around completely brainwashed. I know people that are participating in these things and they don't even really know why they're doing it. You say, why are you doing that? And they can't really give you a real reason why they're doing it. They're only doing it because the status quo says we should do it, or people think, oh, I have to do this because of my organization, or they think that we have to do this thing because this is just what's right. Wait a minute, hold on. We don't really have a moral compass for what's right. We don't truly have a moral compass for that. People have ignored that. We've watched it happen in the previous years in other administrations. And again, I'm not a political person, but I want you guys to notice and pay attention. Look at it very closely. Forget your emotions. Remove your emotions if you can, people, but it's going to be very difficult for most people to remove their emotions out of this conversation. Now, here's the next portion of this piece. Maybe the idea is to get you into a position where now we can push the martial law situation. Now we can begin to push all of the usage of all of these tanks and stuff that we're seeing going over the railroad tracks and stuff. We're seeing this stuff. We're watching this stuff. These things are being shipped into cities, suburban areas, and urban areas. They're bringing in tanks and all these guns. It's got to be something else brewing. Listen, this stuff just doesn't happen like that. It has to be something else in play. My good friend April Mason popped me over this article talking about all these Walmart closings, but instead of them just shutting down the buildings and knocking them down, the buildings are being gutted and now they're being fenced. There's all these crazy fences and stuff is going around these big Walmart stores that's been placed all over the country. It's to the tune of maybe 200 or 300 stores that just shut down. A Walmart closing down is almost impossible. Walmart is the biggest retailer in the world. How in the world would Walmart go out of business? Walmart ain't going out of business. You have to pay very close attention to the signs that's on these walls, man. This stuff is writing is on the wall. But people have ignored it because they've been conditioned. I believe that the overall goal of this particular part is to push another very militant agenda. Because if you get people in duress and they're constantly in this struggle mode, in this resistance mode, what do you think is going to happen? Eventually, the powers that be are going to say, hey, man, we have to declare martial law. We have to do something to control the masses. Now it's going to, okay, now you can't go outside after this time, or you can't assemble together. Now these other rights and these things are now being infringed upon because the temperature has been set to get the people's attitude in a particular way so they can ultimately do this other part of the agenda. Now, I don't know if this is the total part of the agenda, but I do know that there's a very distinct and specific plan in mind to push this policed state idea. It has to be something that will incite it. It's got to be a part of a program. You know, you're getting prisons that are being built like crazy. You're getting these camps that are being built. And don't take my word for this stuff, guys. Please, don't take my word for it. Look it up yourself. Research it out yourself. And you'll see that these things are very valid. You're seeing these massive buildings that are going up with these barbed wire fences and electric fences. And it looks like something off of a doggone X-Men movie. It's crazy. But if you're not aware of this, you'll think that it's just about how angry you are with this president person that's in place. But it's really not about that. It's about something else. It's another agenda at play. And, you know, everybody's not going to accept that. And I understand that everybody's not going to believe it. I don't expect anybody to believe or listen to absolutely anything that I tell them. But I do pray that those that have an ear will hear, because there are those that have ear, and they'll hear it. But the other, you know, Aunt Jemima and Uncle Tom and sleeping people, they're gonna say, hey man, well this is not about this, and this person is he's so anti some. Oh man, they're gonna say all kind of crap. Listen. This could very well be true, but you have to ask yourself, why would this be in place at this point in time? It has to be connected with something else. I saw a movie, and Quartermain was trying to catch Mr. Hyde, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, this big character. Mr. Hyde character is running on these buildings in London, and so he's shooting this gun, and the guy that was standing with Quartermain, he said, you're missing. You missed. He said, I'm not trying to hit him. I'm trying to make him turn. So sometimes if I want you to run left, but you refuse to just go left, all I have to do is create a condition on your right that causes you to go left. But everybody doesn't think that this is something that's pliable in the society. But the society is very specifically being ran, dictated, and governed. Please understand this, ladies and gentlemen. And I trust that those that can hear it, you'll hear it. Pay very close attention. I mean, we're marching, we're doing these wonderful marches and all this stuff. But what are you actually creating? What environment are you creating? What are you actually playing into? It has to be something else at play. Pay a little close attention. Don't take my word for anything I say. Look this stuff up yourself. Check it out yourself. Understand how these systems that are running this whole thing are designed. Notice it very closely. Pay close attention to it. You'll see it if you look very closely. And if you have any sense of sensitivity, you'll notice it. Take your emotions out of it. Take emotionalism out of it. Because there are going to be those that respond to this video that's going to respond purely off of emotionalism. Well, man, you just think that. I'm not trying to convince nobody to do nothing. All I'm simply doing is submitting my thoughts. This is my thoughts. I have the right to think what I think. I have the right to look at this thing very, very, very closely. And I also understand that nobody that is in substantial power is going to leave the potential of their power in the hand of the common person. They don't do that. That's retarded. No one that has any logical sense would think like this. They won't. Okay, so I want you guys to look at this stuff yourself. Take a look at it. Take a look at the layout. Take a look at what's happening and in what time frame it's happening. Take a very close look at how these things are coming to pass. I believe that this thing is ultimately trying to push us to the state of being a complete police state. This is what's happening because all they have to do is create the duress. Just make the environment, make the temperature of the atmosphere so off and so tense that you say, hey, now this leader person has to stand up and say, this is what we're going to do to maintain the peace, or we're going to have to get control of the environment, because it's going to get crazier, man. It is. And if you don't have any understanding, you don't have any sensitivity to this, it'll slide right past you. All right, y'all, this is your friend and brother Robert W. JoJo Hill, the servant, the artist, and the author. I want you guys to be encouraged, be empowered, and most of all, please, be enlightened. The servant has spoken.